In the workplace is somewhere where we see more of the clash of the two paradigms. We had a way of being at one point, and now we're trying to live in this combination of the Western way of knowing and Blackfeet ways of knowing. There's a clash, and you can feel it there, and it results in a lot of workplace trauma.
This is an attempt to get back to what we were as a people, and just a way to make the whole workplace environment a better place to be.
Bringing these principles to the workplace is just one avenue of bringing culture back to our people.
The principles that we're looking at, or the values that we're looking at, are a way for us to help people develop their purposes in life.
The way that I understood the project when we first started was that there are skills that people have and they're not really thought about when you're hiring people. We hire according to just like tacit assumptions that we always, think you have to have in order to have a job. But there's so many skills that people have from the experiences of our paradigm and where we come from that are definitely not represented in databases.
Part of the value of using the data structures is that it can make connections not only between credentials and competencies, but also between competencies and jobs. That's what we're trying to do in Montana, is to provide more meaningful connections between cultural competencies and how those are valuable in the workplace and in specific jobs.
Those competencies and skills were not in any database that you could pull up. So then we had to find resources that would let us build that ourselves, which we did find, the rich skill descriptors. We were like, let's just use our language. We'll just say, here's a word, a Blackfeet word, and we'll tell you what it means, and then we'll use that word. What we found when we tried to do that is the English language has a definition, but ours is more action-based.
Blackfoot and English language are contradictory to one another almost. Blackfoot being a verb-based language, it's a way for us to converse back and forth or move across our brain to get more of a holistic thought process. It causes us to think a little bit different.
It's really been an interesting process. We went and looked for lists of principles, or like in some places they're called values. In most cases, those are just defined like by the simple English definition. And so we found these lists where it was like ikakimat, try hard, and all these words, it had the value and then the simple definition. So we chose some of those and then combined a group of people who have cultural knowledge because they're practicing the culture. We just asked them to discuss that term. And then we talked for hours about all those things, the philosophy, the root words, the breaking apart the words, doing all those things. We have stories that hold our whole culture, the history and everything about our people that's documented through oral history. It carries all of these principles within it. An example of that is a story of Scarface, who's a really important figure in our history. Ikakimat, trying hard, like he had such a huge obstacle in front of him. And so when we hear Ikakimat, like we have to understand that whole entire story in order to understand what we mean by trying hard. And then we translate that into what it would look like in the workplace.
How do you take something as rich as a cultural competency and put it in a data structure? We need to acknowledge and respect that we can never capture all of the depth and meaning of these cultural competencies when we try to represent them in another context. The whole purpose of the data structure that Credential Engine supports, the Credential Transparency Description Language, or CTDL, is about providing a framework for meaningful descriptions. These are rich cultural competencies, but they can still be broken down into meaningful components. And then you map those meaningful components to a data structure, and then that data structure makes these competencies more useful in more contexts for more meaningful connections to all kinds of other data that's in CTDL. Many different projects that are trying to connect jobs with competencies start with standard occupational classifications and basically says, you will do this if you're in this occupation. One of the things that's different about this work is that it flips those traditional job and competency connections and puts the focus where I think it should be, on people and how they interact with each other and how those competencies are critical to bring to the job, not how the job should define what the person should be.
It creates an opportunity for people to get jobs that have skills that they may not have ever been recognized for or would ever get hired for. So embodying these living principles in the workplace creates a better environment where they can thrive.
In our office, we deal with grievances and things like that. And sometimes it's like, this could have been resolved if you would have just sat down and talked about it. And if you would have just looked at the other person as another person. So I think trying to bring us back to those traditional values that we had and the way that we should treat people, I think would be really helpful in preventing workplace issues and then maybe resolving them if there is.
We started this project and we had a goal of creating these rich skill descriptors and putting ourselves into the data. We've been able to do the very beginning part of the work, but there's a huge amount of work that has to come with this if we're really gonna fully realize what these living principles can teach us all. I am excited for the future of this work because I feel that is a way for so many people in our community to have access to jobs that may not have had access before, but have the skills because they've experienced things in their life. But the other part of the work, what I'm excited about it is the living principles being just another way that we're recapturing our identity and putting it back into our paradigm.